Was the Dragon Quest anime a success? You're watching / listening to the Clash KO podcast.
This is the show where we talk about why anime sparks so much passion among its fans.
I'm Colton Cruz.
Brianna Marshall.
And I'm Wyatt Garland.
Like what you hear, like what you see. Subscribe to YouTube or your podcast platform of your choice so you don't miss out on a knockout discussion.
Today we're talking about Dragon Quest: Your Story.
Ooh.
The CGI adaptation of the Dragon Quest games, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
one of the apparently the fan favorite from the middle, which has a lot of like innovative things for its time. It
Yeah,
was
so
very...
first we're going to be doing a spoiler-free review, then we'll talk about a little bit of spoilers, and then we're going to have a discussion, I think, about the
Was it
CGI
successful?
anime and like success.
Yeah.
What success means for this movie.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
All
I
right.
mean, I guess for context, none of us are Dragon Quest game players.
I've
No.
never played a single
But
Dragon
I mean-
Quest game.
I mean, just being right forward on it, I liked the movie.
Oh yeah.
I loved it. Are you kidding me? Like, I literally, like, when I first saw it, I was like, ooh, this looks like Pixar. This looks pretty.
Like Pixar. That's the thing. It's not one of those niche movies where it's like, well, it's the Biohazard movie. Like,
Right.
this movie feels accessible to people who didn't play Dragon Quest or aren't Dragon Quest
Yeah,
fans.
Yeah.
absolutely. I felt completely in love and comfortable with the designs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very fluent in this sort of storyline because I've played video games
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So yeah, I felt settled right in, and I was like, oh, I know what happens. This is the start of a video game. Even the little bit of 2D at the start didn't freak me out at all.
Yeah.
I felt that was a little immersive. You know, it's obviously it was a little stretchy, but
Yeah.
like it got me in.
But
Go ahead.
I think one of the cool things about it is such a rich fantasy world that in this era of, isekai anime dominating, D&D being a big thing, just fantasy genres in general being so accepted by people, it was really easy to be like, oh, this is a fantasy like movie about, fighting an evil wizard, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like the movie, it was like, this is a movie a lot of people can get behind and understand and you're like, get on board with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was beautifully simple, and I happen to enjoy that because it does peel back all the the esoteric nonsense, like the messaging and stuff like that sometimes gets a lot in when a game is trying to, or a story is trying to say a lot. I appreciate a story that's like, no, this is pretty straightforward. It's about a young man like doing his thing, or like I can kind of like call the shots a little bit,
Yeah.
which allows it to move at a quick pace, which is what I want.
Yeah, and it's a ton of fun. I mean, it's bright,
Yes.
it's colorful.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The animation, I think the only like tough thing a person would have if they're going into this movie is it was made in Japan.
Yeah.
And they recorded all the dialogue first, so all of the mouth movements in the CGI match the Japanese.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
if you watch it dubbed, you're going to have a little bit of an issue with kind of like how they emote on the words. Even the subtitles are very different from what the
Yeah.
translation was.
Yeah.
But if you can get past that, I mean, it is seamlessly, it's no different from watching like a Kung Fu Panda or a
Right,
Pixar
yeah.
movie.
Oh yeah, and again, the expressions I feel were really innovative and strong. They sort of worked. They weren't leaning to copy a style directly. Like they weren't trying to look exactly like Dragon Quest, which I think, I don't know if that was a copyright issue, but as actually one of their strong points. Something like the Pokemon movie that came out recently does have to source its material directly from that 90s.
It has to mimic anime.
Yeah.
Where this was kind of somewhere in between of like a stab at like mimicking something more like Pixar.
Yeah, you got to see like cheek textures and stuff. I mean, I remember I fondly remember the main character has freckles. Like
Yeah.
that's like a trait that I was like aware of and like I felt comfortable.
Facial hair.
Yeah,
was
like
in there
the
and
detailing
stuff.
is like is insane. Like literally, like the animal that they're partnered with, I was like, wow, this legit looks like I really thought it was like a real life cat.
It
for
looks.
a second. Yeah.
It looks
No, it's
utterly fantastic.
Yeah.
this
It's so
movie. And-
fun.
and it has that anime action added into. So
Right.
like, it's not just like, oh, I mean, yeah, it's like good animation for them being Lego pieces or for them being toys. It's like, no, it's good fantasy animation for them being like, lightning sword wielding
Right.
superheroes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
basically.
when they use their magic, it's awesome. They get to move at that, superhuman pace. They do a little bit of marionetting, like you were saying.
Yeah, to make it
Yeah.
goofy and fun. But I mean, I think those are the animation techniques you have to bring in, kind of like bounce and stretch and traditional animation. Or, I mean, again, the stop motion-y thing they did in the Lego movie, the way they make the marionette around, it uses the CGI in a way that's like humorous or like works for the action.
Yeah, all the emotion is nailed expertly in the sense of it is still a little exaggerated, but that's what you're looking
But you gotta
for.
think, like, it is a Japanese video game, like, deal with fantasy. Like, if you look at, like, Dragon Quest, you're like, oh yeah, that's anime. I mean, what is his name? Akira Toriyama?
Yes.
Dragon Ball. Like, when I literally saw this movie and, like, I saw Dragon Quest, I was like, oh, maybe it'll be the same, like you were saying earlier, like, maybe it'll be the same like Dragon Ball, but no, since it looks so unique with its own style, I'm like, ooh, heck yeah, let's get into it.
And so, bar none, I mean, if you're a person who likes anime-style movies, likes video game movie adaptations, I think this is something you should definitely check out.
check it out.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
heck, I actually want to play a Dragon Quest
if
game
you
now
like-
because of this movie.
If you like fantasy movies in
Yeah,
general, I would say this is a
definitely check it out,
huge one
yeah.
to check out because it's a diverse new universe. It's
Right.
well beloved.
Yeah, and it's enough to the core where, you know, like they have a different take on, say, like a dragon, or a different take on, say, like
An orc. And
yeah. So
stuff like that.
it was very fun to just see these innovative designs.
It reminds me very. If you're a fan of, honestly, The Legend of Zelda, I would say this is the closest thing I've ever seen
Yeah.
to that, where it's like, it's like that kind of take of like Breath of the Wild on like orcs and ogres and
So
hobgoblins. and stuff.
Netflix, where is my
they
Breath
have
of
this
the
shot.
Wild movie?
Honestly, I mean, this is like 10% off of what a Breath of the Wild
Yeah.
movie would be.
Yeah, this is
So,
exactly how it should look.
Check it out, and that's our kind of spoiler free. Now, jumping into kind of the more
Now.
details of what happens in the movie, there is a really specific thing. Again, spoiler warning here. Give it maybe 5 minutes. Skip ahead. We'll put like a little
Yeah.
like space,
Time
like
thing.
timestamp in the description of when we go to like just kind of broader discussion.
Right.
But I think the big thing a lot of people have an issue with in this movie, or at least is very interesting, is they do a kind of meta twist at the end. Kind of like in the Lego movie where they do a thing where it's like, oh, they're all toys being played with by like people.
Yeah.
They do a thing where it's like, no, you're in a video game and I'm a virus and I'm like making you
I'm gonna
Right.
stop you and go back to the real world.
They sort of they pump the brakes a little bit. They give you the perspective, and then they dive right back in. It's interestingly done because it feels like just an ending message as opposed to like
concluding the story,
well,
really.
relating to the story. It
Yeah.
does feel
Yeah.
a little bit removed. It is kind of like a contextual sort of like, oh, you guys know this is all just a game, right? And it feels almost like a bit of a bummer, but they jump right back into the video game atmosphere immediately. So I feel like it's just kind of like a comment as opposed to a
what the whole movie had been about the whole
Yeah.
time.
exactly, because
Exactly, yeah.
the message of the movie stays true through even this moment that takes you out of the movie for a moment.
But they kind of sneak like a love letter to the video game people in
Right.
there, which I feel like a lot of the video game fans did not appreciate.
No.
I mean, apparently, like, what was wanted, and I can understand why, because the movie was going so perfectly pure.
Yeah.
As far as, like, this is fantasy, this is...
This is the story of this dragon.
Right, yeah, this is
your journey.
yeah, this is your story, but, like, you know, then we find out why it's called your story, because it's about, like,
Yeah.
a player
Somebody
playing the
actually playing
game.
through it.
And, you know, whether or not you like this as far as a device used in the movie, I don't feel like it subtracts from enjoying the movie from, like, just a standard, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is cool fantasy, this is fun. And I feel like it bravely makes the movie about video gaming.
Yeah, 100%.
I like that part of it for sure.
Right.
I think there's also an interesting part where it kind of covers the ass of the movie a lot. Like
Yeah.
on a negative side for this movie, I mean, the pacing sometimes feels like a video game in a bad way of like, oh, okay, we're about to do this thing. Oh, but we need to get the dragon orb, and that requires a fairy fetch quest, which like does this thing where you fight robots. And I was like,
There's a lot of ass.
I was like, that really just could have just not been in here from like just the narrative
Right.
perspective.
Right.
But when they do it like, oh, well, this is a video game, that you're like, part of the narrative is that this is a video game. You're like, well, that really covers your ass. And like, and also, I mean, it makes sense, like, because they even have a moment like a couple of times where they're like, robots. And you're
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, I like, as someone who's unfamiliar with Dragon Quest, I was kind of like, maybe that's a thing that is also weird in the Dragon Quest universe, but like, no, robots was a weird thing in the game because that was something that was added by
the guy
player
literally won, he was like,
as
"Can I
a
have robots?"
preference. Same thing with like the love thing. They do a thing where like they do like a choice wheel inside
Right,
his head
right.
as he makes this decision of like whether he wants to marry this girl or this girl. And there's this thing of like, oh, well, he was meant to like marry this other girl. And so he like drinks a potion and he goes through like, again, like a dialogue.
He goes
decision
in.
tree.
He goes into the source code. Is what it looks
yeah,
like.
I literally like asked you because like we had to stop for a second. I was just like, okay, it's just like weird digital thing.
Yeah,
like
because it's briefly digital, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, I think this is a reference to the fact that you could choose who you wanted
Which
to be within the
yeah.
I
game.
felt like was a really organic way to be like,
Right.
it's like the video game, but it's not like that's just how things work in this
I was
world.
I was applauding the video game for like getting in a very light meta sort of spread,
Yeah.
but then that gets a more heavy-handed.
But when they
towards
make
the
God like a virus, like it's a little weird.
Yeah.
And I understand why people wouldn't like that.
So, like, for me, like, when we first watched it, I was just like, oh, because, like, we kind of watched it in halves, because, you know, when you watch movies late at night, you're like, all right, well, I gotta work in the morning, it's fine. So, like, we watched the first half, and we were like, oh, this is such a great, like, video game, like, story, scenario, but then, like, after we watched, like, the rest of it, we were just like, I kind of was like, this is kind of a, in a way, slapback for people like me who grew up on video games. Like, literally, the character was like, when I was young, this game meant so much to me. Like, I love
the montage of him like blowing in the SNES
the
cartridge.
yeah, and he's like
yeah.
just like loving, like falling in love with these characters, and it's just like, no, this game like this is my world, and I'm like, okay, this, I can see why people don't like this.
Right.
But in a sense, it was very, like, sentimental and sweet to me. I was like, oh, I feel
Right.
that. Like, I relate to the character.
And like, I feel that battle
Yeah.
with you. Like, where I'm like, no,
Exactly.
that was a really touching moment. It was just
I
kind
can
of
see
in the
why
middle
people
of
hated
something.
it. It was
Right,
just like,
right.
we're literally about to finish the movie.
Right.
Like,
It's not what the
it was-
whole
yeah.
it's not what the whole movie was about, and it's a little bit like that feeling when it's like, oh, it was all a dream. It's a little bit like
Kind
that.
of.
Because it makes the overarching villain a real world hacker who wanted to troll
Be mean.
the
Yeah.
video game player, which just, as far as messaging for the whole movie goes, it was just kind of like, I don't understand why that needed to be the main
why was that
antagonist here.
Right.
But and like that's weird. But I mean, I think that's something we're going to talk about as we talk about this larger 3D CGI anime thing. Like, we keep comparing it to Pixar, I think, because of the accessibility of, like, again, people who don't like Dragon Quest, don't like anime, can come in and enjoy this movie, and it's a wonderful, like, piece of media.
It's very family oriented. Like, when I
In the sense of, it's well-rounded. I mean, yes, we talked about it as a little, like, a lot to take in, but anybody who's played a video game before will be
kinda
able
understand
to.
it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not inaccessible like something like the Gantz movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
exactly. Like, nobody goes and watches. Okay, so like CGI anime like movies. Let's talk about Gantz. Let's talk about the Resident Evil movies.
Final
right?
Fantasy
Like,
is-
even Space Pirate Captain Harlock. Beautiful 3D CGI anime movies. But the only people who go and watch them are people who are Gantz fans
Right.
or Space Pirate Captain
Exactly.
Harlock
Yeah.
fans. Like,
You could go in blind like we did and
And
see Dragon Quest
it's,
and
quote, meant for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. It is our story.
It's not this like yeah.
Shut up.
But it's not this weird niche kind of movie where it's like, well, we did it in 3D CGI because that was kind of the cheapest way to just shit one of these out for
Yeah.
you guys to just buy a bunch of crap
It doesn't
for.
feel like that. It feels like a genuine like story. Now it's success. We're gonna have to talk about now.
So
okay.
end of the day, was this movie a success?
no.
No, technically no.
But I think it was a success because I had a hell of a great time watching
Right.
it. Successful wise, no.
Yeah. How much? So what are the numbers?
Yeah, so
here?
let's just explain what we mean by success, and we're talking financial success, which. So this movie was made for $18 million,
Which is incredible.
Which is
Incredible.
To put that in
Compared
perspective,
to like some of our like animated movies here,
yeah,
like
Kung Fu Panda 3 was $150 million. Like, let's just, I mean, a lot of that goes to paying for celebrities. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But
still.
that is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
100%.
insane. That's insane.
I mean, I think the original Pokemon movie was $30 million. Like, that's Mewtwo Strikes Back, like the drawn one.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
So to just put that in perspective, this movie was made for almost nothing, and for the stunning for the stunning, visual of what it ended up being.
yeah.
I think far and away excess, but it's only made $11 million so
Yeah.
far.
so technically it was unsuccessful.
And
But
I mean, we'll get to the butt in a second, but we have to be realistic about like the video game thing. We're pretty forgiving, and we can kind of like palette a lot of this stuff. And I mean, what is it like this? It's a lot like the Pokemon movie where you go in sort of like, yeah, I mean, you should know what Pokemon is. You should know what it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff where you like video game stuff is happening and you're supposed to just blink and be like, yeah, whatever. And yeah, there's 8 acts, whatever. It's all so fast. But we have friends and we have people that we know that watch the movie and they're like, no, it was just too fast. It was too much. It was all at once.
But I mean,
Like,
that's the thing. I mean, we're talking to you guys, our audience of people who want to watch a review about Dragon Quest,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you're someone who likes Dragon Quest, likes the My Hero Academia movie,
Oh, yeah. You'll be
likes
fine.
these kinds
Oh,
of things, you got to get used to looking on IMDb and seeing your movie has a 6.6.
Yeah.
Because it's just, that rating isn't what it is for you. I mean, the Pokemon movie was raked across the coals when it first came out when we were children, but that didn't fucking matter at
Yeah,
all
it
because it was the Pokemon movie and we loved it, and that's valid.
Because
right?
the thing that's interesting about the way that this new media is it's reflective of other media too. When a critic looks at a movie, they're looking at its grounding as a piece of cinema removed from everything else.
Is there a plot?
But that's
things
just
like that.
That's just not how modern media exists anymore. This is a series based off of a video game that has an anime
not even
style.
and also not in North America.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of other like sort of things coming in. There's a lot of expectation. There's a lot of like things coming in and out of it. And people who have a broader perspective and have a sort of like a fascination or a curiosity for something that's interesting and maybe a little different are gonna enjoy things like anime and things like this movie a lot more. Now, the real question is how does this talk about the potential of movies like this?
The future, you mean?
The future. So I just quickly just talking about making some points about history here. So you've got, if you go back to 2001, you've got the original Final Fantasy movie in 3D CGI.
Yep.
2006, you've got Advent Children. At least my dates might be off because I'm talking about release in America versus release in Japan.
Right.
Then you've got, your Space Pirate Captain Harlox and stuff like that in the middle of 2000s. Biohazard movies, again, which are very niche. All of these movies are very niche. When Advent Children came out, more people saw that movie because it was just a triumph of CGI at the time than it was because it was an anime or anything like that.
I think for back then too, it's more like, for me, it's like I love Final Fantasy. So I saw it more as a video game movie than necessarily as an anime movie.
I would say even if that, because it was something so different.
Exactly. That was your expectation. It was different because you're like, I've played a piece of media that explains and gives me so much context and previous appreciation, so you just want to cheer in a theater. It's a different movie experience,
Comparing it to, again, going to the 2019 examples of Lupin the Third, the Pokemon movie, and this movie. Look at the Pokemon movie. I feel like if Mewtwo Strikes Back's Evolution had come out without the original anime existing for it, we'd have had a hard time calling it an anime CGI, right? Because it really bridges the gap because it is almost a shot-for-shot remake of something that we already know is for sure anime, right?
I just think it's more nostalgic because since we already know what happens in it, it's with this, it's just I think this is the first Dragon Quest movie.
I don't think you can compare this to the Pokemon movie exactly because this movie, again, even the Pokemon movie, I know everybody knows what Pokemon is. I know that even your parents play Pokemon
They
Go.
know what it is.
But for this movie to come and be something that anybody could sit down and watch and be just vaguely know that Dragon Quest is a video game does a much better job of describing that Dragon Quest, it's a fantasy video game versus these little monsters fight each other, except in this movie that's really kind of characterized as a bad thing, but
it's really confusing, right?
Pokemon makes no sense in
general.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But Dragon Quest I love so much because in a vacuum it still is this beautiful movie that makes sense.
What's exciting about it is the critiques of it are because of actual pacing issues, not context issues.
Yeah, not because I don't know what a Pikachu is.
Nobody is confused at this movie. They're angry that it didn't sit well with them. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, I thought it was too fast. Or
there are technical mistakes.
Yes, exactly. And those are super, super easy to fix or change in the future for other upcoming things. What we're saying is it's really exciting that movies that are based in video games or in anime or have this sort of really interesting source material are now understanding that they can take the Pixar approach, that they can take a movie approach and succeed at it.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna take some time. This is definitely a trailblazer, and that's what's exciting about it because we had a lot of fun watching it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was visually stunning. It was a lot of fun, and I think it's a triumph. Because again, it didn't make money. It only had $18 million. But
it was only made for $18 million.
Exactly. It's an indie movie compared to other movies. Yeah.
Exactly. It's an indie movie.
Yeah.
And so this speaks to the potential because we're going to see a lot more of things like this.
Oh, 100% for sure.
Before we get the knockout hits. But it's just so exciting to see the stepping stones that, no, this is where we are going. We're making progress. We're heading in a direction. And that's what just gets me excited.
And it feels good. And as much as we compare it to Pixar, I think the other strength we kind of are subconsciously calling it with Pixar is Pixar wasn't great. Or Toy Story, it wasn't a good movie because the CGI looked incredible, right?
No.
Pixar...
that movie is solid as a rock.
What Pixar did best was their story department. And I think when we look at something like this that isn't just a nostalgia adaptation.
Right.
We're seeing like, no, a story department was involved here with this project and also did a very good job.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's the goal, because that's what art is, a fusion of multiple things, not just flashy animation on top of like something that people know.
Yeah.
And I am and on the like people know thing, like I am absolutely fucking tired of getting these just shit out Cyborg 009 movies
stuff
and
like that.
Gantz movies and stuff. Like I love those properties, sure, but I hate that they just like there's a lot of like industrial thinking around, oh, I mean, what's the cheapest way to just throw something together and shit that out for our fan base to come spend another $30 this year on?
Yeah,
We're Dragon they came out and they were like, here's a good piece of product that's not just for this like niche group of people to show up and buy our crap.
What's interesting about that stuff is like I could show a younger kid that or somebody who was unrelated to the concept, and they would maybe have their opinion about it, and maybe they'd be confused,
have a good time, too.
But they'd still get the story. And that's, again, like, that sounds like it sounds like
we're lowering the bar a lot there.
But we grew up with a lot of crap that thought that wasn't necessary, and we're just really excited to see that people are realizing it is necessary, because obviously it is.
Yeah, we don't want Suicide Squad to be our what we get every time. We want our Harley Quinn movies, all right?
Yes!
We want a condensed, real like approach to the character, and we want those characters to have their opportunity to shine. And there's lots of video games out there that we want to have shine. What's a video game that you want to see get the Dragon Quest approach?
Yeah.
Legend of Zelda.
Let us know in the comments below. Let us know if you saw this movie, what you thought about it, if you disagree or agree with our opinions. What do you think, again, should be the next CGI anime movie? Make sure to like and subscribe so you catch our next video, and we will catch you next time.